The Daesh terror group claims responsibility for a deadly truck bombing at a Baghdad market, which killed over 60 people. Iraq's premier slams the comments made by the U.S. Army Chief of Staff over the possible partitioning of Iraq. And Etijah learns that pro-Hadi elements in Yemen are creating lists of Houthi supporters in what may be the start of a bloody crackdown. Hello and welcome to the program. You're watching Al Etijah English News with me, Surgeon Federado. Our top story tonight takes us to Iraq, where the Daesh terror group has claimed responsibility for a deadly truck bombing which struck a busy market in Baghdad's northeastern district of Sadr City. At least 60 people were killed in the attack and more than 200 others were injured. This is one of the deadliest bombings to hit the Iraqi capital this year.
It was supposed to be another busy day at the vegetable market for many in Baghdad's northeastern district of Sadr City. But instead, its residents woke up to one of the bloodiest attacks to hit the Iraqi capital this year. At least 60 people were killed and 200 others were injured when a refrigerator truck packed with explosives blew up inside the Jamila market early Thursday morning.
It was around 6 a.m. and the market was very crowded. Here, basically every day from 5 to 7, it's crowded, especially at this side.
The Daesh terror group immediately claimed responsibility for the deadly attack on the predominantly Shia neighborhood. Residents here blamed the lack of security personnel protecting such overcrowded areas.
First, I think the market has no security measures whatsoever. The vehicle with the bomb entered here without any inspection. Here there is no protection by security personnel.
This bombing comes only 2 days after a similar attack in Iraq's central city of Baghouba killed dozens of people.
Let's get more on this with Ali Al-Dabah. He's a former Iraqi government spokesperson joining us from Baghdad. Mr. Dabah, we have seen a spike in these sort of attacks in recent weeks, leaving hundreds dead. Is this a failure on the part of the government?
I think it is a big failure. What happened today, it is a crowded place. It is a market, and it was a target. It was a target for many times, and there should be a proper measure should be taken by the security forces, not to repeat the same in the same way. But unfortunately, the security forces, they are not taking anything. No proper measure for checking. It's a huge car enter the checkpoint, and there should be proper checking, proper inspection, or whatever scan to the vehicle should be scanned. But unfortunately, there is no. It is an awful. It is a horrific attack. It killed a huge number of people, innocent people, civilians, and I think they should keep questioning them. The security forces, those who are in charge for this point, as well as the Ministry of Interior, they should be held responsible for this deficiency.
All right, former Iraqi government spokesperson, Mr. Ali Al-Dabah, thanks very much for talking to Etijah, sir. And staying in Iraq, where according to the German Defense Ministry, Daesh militants have launched a chemical attack against Iraq's Kurdish forces. A spokesperson for the ministry reported that the attack took place in the city of Mahmur, southwest of Iraq's Kurdish capital, Erbil. According to the report, Daesh militants used mortar or artillery shells to target Kurdish forces with chlorine gas. A contingent of German troops is stationed in northern Iraq training the Kurdish Peshmerga forces. Meanwhile, Iraq's Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi has dismissed the comments made by the U.S. Army Chief of Staff over the possibility of partitioning Iraq. Abadi called the comments irresponsible and reflective of the U.S. general's ignorance of Iraq's reality. Now, on Wednesday, when asked whether there could be reconciliation between the Sunnis and Shias of Iraq, General Raymond Odierno said that it's becoming more difficult by the day. Iraq might not look like it did in the past. I think that is for the region and politicians to figure out, but that is something that could happen. He's referring to the partitioning here, of course. It might be the only solution, but I'm not ready to say that yet. We have to deal with ISIL first and decide what it will look like afterwards. Let's get some analysis on this, and for that we can turn to Dr. Mohammed Jamil. He's the director at the Arab Organization for Human Rights in the UK. Dr. Jamil, do you think Washington is actively working to partition Iraq?
Good evening. Thank you for having me in this program. I think America and the leaders in America like this general dream to divide Iraq, but the worst scenario is to see Iraq a divided country. Dividing Iraq is a prescription for more wars. You can divide the land, but you can't divide the people and the fortune. Through the years, Iraqis have lived in harmony and peace until 2003, when the Western Alliance, led by America, invaded Iraq and created discord between the one nation to Shiite and Sunni, which developed by the time into a sectarian war. From legal point, no one can decide the fate of the country on behalf of the Iraqi people, nor America or anyone else. The Iraqi people have a constitution in which they agreed to live in as a one nation in one country, and the United Nations Charter do not allow other countries whatsoever to intervene in the sovereignty, not here the sovereignty of the regime. We talk about the sovereignty of people. It is type of a self-determination. No one can decide that on behalf of the Iraqi people.
Right, yes. Right. But the American establishment in Washington, I mean, this is not the first time that we've heard such comments. We've also had Iraqi politicians traveling to the U.S., where we have had reports that they were discussing ways to partition the country. How do you think comments like these are affecting the relationship between Baghdad, the government in Baghdad, and Washington?
Basically, the government in Baghdad is a failure government. I think the people in Iraq must have a go, and this needs a support from the international community. The international community, in particular the United Nations, have many mechanisms. Why they do not use them? They have mechanism to tackle the crime, the killing, the sectarian war, the torture in a prison, the capital punishment, which in particular target the Sunni. So we have to talk about the people who refuse in all means these proposals, whatever their leaders in Iraq talk or the leaders in America suggest in this case. Yes.
Okay, we are going to have to leave it there. Dr. Mohammed Jamil, Director at the Arab Organization for Human Rights in the UK. Thanks very much for your time, sir. Well, families of British soldiers killed following the 2003 U.S.-led invasion of Iraq are threatening legal action. The bereaved want a long-delayed inquiry into the war published by the year's end.
No, sorry, the position on WMD had changed dramatically as a result of September the 11th.
The facts on WMD had not changed. The perception of the risk had changed, but not the risk itself.
You have to take an assessment of risk. Now, my assessment of risk prior to September the 11th was that Saddam was a menace, that he was a threat.
That was the testimony of the former British Premier Tony Blair before the Chilcot inquiry. This parliamentary committee was mandated with looking into the reason behind Britain's decision to take part in the US-led invasion of Iraq back in 2003. But years later, and the findings of the committee are yet to be published. Now bereaved families of British soldiers killed during the Iraq War are done waiting. Lawyers representing 29 families are threatening legal action to force Sir John Chilcot to publish those findings.
Well, the reason we've taken legal action now is that we feel Sir John is dragging his feet far too long. This inquiry has been going on for 6 years. It's not months overdue, it is years overdue. We've had enough. There are people out there, bereaved people, that want answers, want conclusions to this Iraq.
The inquiry, which was set up by former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown in 2009, was initially expected to submit its report within a year. But Chilcot has time and again cited complexities involved in the process.
Surely you must have an idea of roughly, approximately, what period of time is needed next. This uncertainty is clearly painful for those families.
Yes, I'm facing a genuine difficulty regarding the Maxwellisation process, as I believe the committee understands. Until it's finished, and you can't put an absolutely firm deadline on it at this point when it's ongoing, it's really not possible to say.
A total of 179 British soldiers were killed in Iraq between 2003 and 2010.
Disagreements in the country.
Blair has been at the center of controversy, with many accusing him of dragging Britain into the war under a false pretext.
Moving on to other news now, and in what could prove to be another bloody crackdown in Yemen, Al-Ittijah has learned that pro-Hadi elements in the country are creating lists to identify Shia and Houthi supporters. This is the fugitive Yemeni president, Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi, issued a decree in which he reserves the right to try any soldier for treason over Houthi affiliation. On the ground in Yemen, the southern breakaway factions in the port city of Aden are reportedly confiscating property belonging to residents from the north and closing down their businesses. Experts fear that the move could trigger a wider sectarian conflict. This is the humanitarian situation in the country worsens by the day amid an ongoing Saudi bombardment which has claimed thousands of civilian lives. For its part, the international medical aid group Doctors Without Borders reported that the conflict is having an enormous impact on access to health care. The head of the group's emergency unit, who just returned from Yemen, was quoted as saying that since March, the level of violence has radically increased in the country. We have seen mass casualties from bombings, such as in the internally displaced persons camp in Harad or in markets, schools and other places where a lot of civilians are concentrated. The impact of this conflict is much wider than only the bombing or the shooting. The situation is growing worse every week. The blockade is having an enormous impact on the population, and you can see it on different levels. Okay, we can now talk to Catherine Shakdam. She is a consultant with the Canada-based Anderson for International Defense and Security Consulting. Catherine, you are talking to a lot of people on the ground in Yemen. Do you think we're on the verge of some sort of a witch hunt there?
Hello?
Yes, Catherine, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can hear you perfectly well. As I was saying earlier, yes, there's a strong possibility, and a lot of people are worried on the ground. And only because, runaway President Hadi seems very determined with the Saudi to create sectarian tensions in Yemen. And the very fact that they're trying to break Yemen into regional lines by having the Southerners, kicking Northerners from their businesses and properties in the South is proof of that. And again, we had, we heard reports that in the north, in the capital, Sana'a, lists were being, raised, where a lot of people were actually giving out names, naming people either working with the Houthi or maybe pro-Houthi or being Zaidi. And they're basically trying to profile people ahead of potential trial or potential revenge attacks. And this is something that is extremely worrying. I'm not saying that it's happening right now, but it's becoming a very real possibility only because they're taking those steps. And those steps should not ever be taken.
All right, Catherine Shakdam there in London. Thanks very much for your time, Catherine. Well, Turkey is facing a snap election this autumn after talks over forming a coalition government broke down on Thursday. According to Turkey's premier, new elections now appear to be the only option. Last-ditch negotiations between his ruling AK party and the main opposition CHP yielded no deal. Now, Ahmet Davutoglu urged Parliament to call for a new vote as soon as possible. The AKP failed to hold on to its parliamentary majority in June's general elections and was forced to seek an alliance with its rival CHP. However, many in the AKP, including President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, reportedly favored elections as it could restore the party's majority and enable it to realize its ambitions of a presidential system.
It seems that the duty of appealing to the nation has increased greatly as a possibility. Actually, when we consider the talks over forming a government with the CHP have failed, it has become the only possibility. So far, we have not received a proposal to form a coalition government. We were proposed to form a short-term government that would rule the country for 3 months, and after 3 months we would go to early elections. How can you talk about people's will when you say, I will not form a coalition government, so I will hold a snap election? I believe that Turkey has missed an historic opportunity.
The leader of the Western-backed Syrian National Coalition arrived in Moscow for talks aimed at finding a political solution to the conflict in Syria. The SNC's visit to Moscow comes as international and regional players in the Syrian conflict seek a response to the growing threat from the Daesh terror group. The SNC boycotted peace talks held in the Russian capital in January and April, distrustful of Russia and critical of the Damascus rivals who attended. You're watching Al Attijah English News, still to come on the program. The death toll soars following 2 explosions at the world's 10th largest port. Well, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif visited the Pakistani capital Islamabad following his trip to Lebanon and Syria. The visiting Iranian diplomat met with the Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The pair exchanged views on further enhancing bilateral relations.
Here to work with Pakistan in order to expand the possibilities. We discussed further in our delegation visit between myself and Brother Sattar Aziz on how we can actually effectuate these decisions that have been made by our leaders in order to enhance and expand the cooperation between the 2 countries. Our cooperation go well beyond simply economic cooperation. We have security cooperation, border cooperation, cultural cooperation between Iran and Pakistan, which are in the interest of the 2 peoples as well as in the interest of peace and security in the region.
Well, the death toll from a massive explosion which rocked the Chinese port city of Tianjin has risen to 50. More than 700 others have been injured and hospitals are struggling to cope with the number of casualties. The 2 blasts in the world's 10th largest port went off at a warehouse storing toxic chemicals. Tower blocks were demolished and thousands of cars were burnt out.
Hospitals are still scrambling to treat more than 500 people injured by the Tianjin blasts. They're also dealing with the crush of panicked friends and family members looking for loved ones. Song Jianyong says 10 of his colleagues are missing.
We are checking hospitals in Tianjin downtown through friends to see if we can find the 10 people. They transferred some severely injured people to other hospitals, so we are so anxious as we are now unable to get hold of them.
Miss Xu says her family just located her sister-in-law after searching through the night.
We didn't know the situation. We were in different places at that time. We just knew that residential compound was badly damaged after explosions occurred.
Many families who had to flee the blast zone sought shelter and medical attention in a makeshift camp in an elementary school. Li Lian, a 23-year-old student, came to offer help.
After I saw the video, I think a lot of people would have been injured, and many residential areas were damaged. So I thought I would come over to help. I feel so sorry for them.
The explosions took place in an industrial section of the port city where a variety of hazardous chemicals are stored. Tianjin Environmental Protection Bureau Chief Wen Wurei says that the smoke still billowing from the blast site is not yet a major concern.
It would be harmful if you breathe in this toxic air for a long time, but at present it has not exceeded the standard too much based on our monitoring.
Scores of people, including at least 12 firefighters, have been reported killed so far. Officials say the cause of the disaster is under investigation.
And now time to recap our top stories. The Daesh terror group claims responsibility for a deadly truck bombing at a Baghdad market which killed over 60 people. Iraq's premier slams the comments made by the U.S. Army Chief of Staff over the possible partitioning of Iraq. And Ittijah learns that pro-Hadi elements in Yemen are creating lists of Houthi supporters in what may be the start of a bloody crackdown. That's it for me and the whole team here at Ittijah English. Thanks for watching. Good night.